Hello! I figured it was time to do an updated swatch party featuring all of the Looxi shadows that I currently own. So if you're looking for a video that shows the comparisons between some Looxi shadows, then go ahead and just keep on watching and subscribe. Before we go ahead and get started with swatches, I do want to preface by saying Looxi is doing a sale right now on their shadows, and it seems like they're discontinuing quite a few. So some of these may not be around for much longer, or they might be gone already, but I figured it would just be easiest to swatch everything that I have, so that way if you happen to have some of these shades, even if they aren't for sale anymore, you can see how it compares to other things in Looxi's line. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. So first up, we have two iridescent shades that are eerily similar. They both come from variations of the Ice Cream Social. This comes from the first Ice Cream Social. This is the shade Cookie Dough. This comes from the Ice Cream Social 2, and this is the shade Salted Caramel. They're very, very similar. Now, keep in mind, I have gotten these shades over quite a period of time, and so the formula from Looxi has changed. And so some of them you might notice differences in formula. I picked up Cookie Dough pretty recently, so that's a pretty new formula for them. Or maybe not a new formula, but this is what this product is still like today. Salted Caramel I got quite a while ago, so I can't say for sure if it's the same. Both of these shades are an iridescent tealy blue with a pink shift. The difference is that Salted Caramel has a little bit more of a creaminess to it, whereas this one, Cookie Dough, is completely iridescent on the side. This next shade is one that I also consider an iridescent. This is the shade Get Naked. It's got a little bit more of a base to it, kind of a little bit of a pinky base, you can see there. But it has a greeny gold shift in it, and you can see it's a much smoother sparkle compared to these more piecey sparkles in the ones that we've already swatched. The next shade is a really old one. This is the shade Bubbly. I don't think that they sell this anymore, but it's kind of a champagne, but there's something almost a little bit like gray about it in the base. It's a cool toned champagne with the gold. It's an interesting color for sure, and you can see much shinier and less sparkly again. We've got three shades now that are essentially the same color, just different finishes. So the one on my index finger is Bougie, the one on my middle finger is Rosé, and the one on my ring finger is Angel Wings. And you can see they are a very similar color, but we kind of go from the least sparkly to the most sparkly. And I'll go ahead and swatch them. So this is Bougie, and you can see it's almost a little bit satiny. This next one is Rosé, and now we're getting a little bit more shimmer, but nothing super piecey. And then lastly, we've got Angel Wings, which is definitely the most piecey sparkle of the three. But the shifts in them are very similar, as is that base color. Now we've got a newer shade. This is the shade Sugar and Spice. It's a little bit pinkier in the base and a little bit more like of a tealy green in the shift. But here it is swatched out, and you can definitely see that difference in that shimmer color on the top. And on the base, it looks pretty similar to Angel Wings, especially. This next shade is First Class. This one has, again, a kind of like pinky beige base, but this has even more of a green shimmer on top compared to Sugar and Spice. So there is that one, and you can see that green a little bit more. Now down here, we have the shade Abracadabra and then Snickerdoodle. Abracadabra is a dupe for JD Glow Unexpected, in my opinion. It's got a little bit of a deeper brown base, but it's got a kind of green and blue sparkle on top. You can kind of see it kind of looks like these two combined in that sparkle. And then the shade Snickerdoodle is that same depth of base that's in Abracadabra, but it's got a much more blue silver kind of sparkle on top. We'll go ahead and round out this arm with the shade Hybrid, which is again a blue-brown duochrome similar to this one, but the base is much more red and the shift in it is much more blue. This is also a really chunky shade from them. I think that this is like 100% dupe of the shade Terra Borealis from Terra Moons, and I'll include that recent dupe video I did down below in the comments, so if you want to see all of the dupes I found, you can check that out there. You know what? I think I lied. I'm going to try to include one more shade on this arm because it does have a blue to it. This is the shade Supersonic, but where these two have had more of a warm kind of brown or even red base, this one has a cool gray base with that blue sparkle on top. So here is Supersonic, but you can definitely see that sparkle in it is blue and it aligns more with the sparkle in these two. Now I'm going to move on to my other arm, but we'll compare all of the swatches at the end once both arms are filled. So this first shade is Dark Side of the Moon. Next we have the shade Scream, and then we have a multi-chrome called Euphoria, and this is a $13 shade, whereas the rest have been $3. So here are all of those together. You can see there's something similar about them. Dark Side of the Moon, I personally feel like is kind of underwhelming. It's got a grayish base with like a little bit of a reddish purple kind of sparkle over it, but it's not super opaque and it's just nothing super fancy to me. Scream is the much better version of that shadow in my opinion. It's much sparklier, much more impactful, and it has a really cool shift from a purple to a gold, which I feel like you can kind of see on my finger. There's that gold on the very end. And then the last is Euphoria, and like I said, this is a multi-chrome. It's got a much more metallic finish rather than sparkly, and it's a shade that goes from like this purple that you're seeing to a green. I had someone suggest I use a mirror, and I actually did go out and get a mirror, so let me grab that and I'll show you. Don't mind my dirty desk, but you can definitely see that gold shift in these shadows over in the mirror and that green shift in the multi-chrome. The multi-chromes from Looxi are a black base, and I think that they're really shifty and pretty good for the price. They're the same price as Copacetic's though, and Copacetic does have a pretty wide range of multi-chromes, so it might be worth looking there too if you're looking at those multi-chromes. I feel like none of the ones on this arm have enough of a shift for me to warrant showing the mirror though, so we'll go ahead and move on. The next two shades are two of what I consider to be the most impressive from Looxi. This is from the Butterfly Kisses collection, the original one. This is the shade Painted Lady. And then we've got Once Upon a Time from the Fairy Tale collection. Both very, very pretty purples. Now I am biased because I do love a good purple. But Painted Lady has kind of a blue and goldish sparkle in it, whereas Once Upon a Time only has that blue, but it is a strong blue shift. So let me swatch both of those for you as well. I feel like you can maybe see that gold in Painted Lady a little bit better on the shift. And then you can see that like really strong blue in both angles on my arm. Next, we've got the shade Stormy Morning. This is a very chunky shade. It's a purple with a pink shimmer in it. This is from the Happy Hour collection, and it's good. It's not my favorite Looxi shadow. It doesn't stand out to me, but it is pretty unique from everything I've got from them. Next to that is one that you can tell I have loved. This is the shade Ube. It's from the original Ice Cream Social collection, and it is a light purple with a tealy green that also shifts to a pink. So I'll go ahead and pull out the mirror and see if we can capture that pink shift, because I feel like that's one that's always eluded me in my videos. Oh yeah, look at that. You can really see that pink there, can't you? Hopefully you can. I feel like I can in the mirror. Next up, we've got another new shade. This is the shade Goody Goody Gumdrops from the Holiday 2022 release, and it's actually really similar to the shade Adonis from the Butterfly Kisses 2 collection, except this one has much more of a base. So here's that one from the newest collection versus Adonis from the Butterfly Kisses 2. And you can see much less of a base, but the shift in it is really, really similar. But they both have kind of like a blue and gold going on in them. This one just happens to have a little bit more of a purple base. But look how similar those shifts are. I will say, texture-wise though, they are different. This one does feel thicker than the old shade. This is another shade from that Happy Hour collection. This is Electric Lemonade. It is a blue, but really, I mean, it's kind of iridescent if you're not looking at it in the light. There isn't a whole lot of base going on there, but it does have a really pretty, like, kind of sky blue sparkle in it. It is kind of similar to the cookie dough and salted caramel shades, but I would say it's a little bit more blue. This next shade is called Dark Waters, and I'm not a blue eyeshadow person, but this is a gorgeous blue eyeshadow. I will show you the flip on this because it does go to a purple, but we'll go ahead and swatch all of the blues so that way I can show you those shifts all at once. Really, I guess the last one I want to swatch before I show you the shifts is this shade Santa Monica. It's more of a tealy kind of blue, but it does kind of have a pink shift in it as well, so that's why I wanted to swatch it before we pull out the mirror. All right, I feel like you can definitely see the purple on the end of Deep Water, but I'm not sure if you can really see it on Santa Monica that much. If anything, I feel like you can see something a little purple more on Electric Lemonade, which is interesting because that's something I've never really noticed on my eyes when I've worn it. I think we're gonna go ahead and stop that second arm there. So here are both of these arms together so you can see all of those shades. I'll walk you through the shade names again really quickly, and then I'll keep this arm on, wash this arm off so that way you can see the next set of shades compared to the blues and purples, and then we'll go from there. On this arm, we have Cookie Dough, Salted Caramel, Get Naked, Bubbly, Bougie, Rosé, Angel Wings, Sugar and Spice, First Class, Abracadabra, Snickerdoodle, Hybrid, and Supersonic. On this one, we have Dark Side of the Moon, Scream, Euphoria, Painted Lady, Once Upon a Time, Stormy Morning, Ube, Goody Goody Gumdrop, Adonis, Electric Lemonade, Dark Waters, and Santa Monica. Now we're moving into the greens, and this first shade is a really interesting one. It's got a green base with a blue and like pink sheen on top. This is the shade Morning Rain, and I'll of course pull out the mirror to show it to you. Next, we have a shade that is called Peppermint Kisses. This one to me isn't my favorite, but I know my friend Hot Vegan Hannah really likes this one. It's got a very, very light green base on it, kind of like a minty green, and then it's got a pink kind of sparkle on top. Next up is the shade Phone Home. This is a really interesting one. It's got a very light gray base with a strong green sparkle that shifts pink, and I'll show that to you once I pull out the mirror. And then the last two that we'll do for now are the shades Apollo and Emerald City, which are very, very close to each other. Apollo has a little bit less of a base than Emerald City does, but they both are that same type of kind of like spring green with a golden shimmer on top. And here are all of those with the mirror. I'm not sure if you can see that pink. There, you can kind of see that pink in Phone Home, that middle one on the mirror. Now we've got another multi-chrome. This is the shade Wish You Were Here. It goes from a really bright kind of limey blue green to this very like orangey kind of copper gold that you see on the corner. Again, you already know, but we'll pull out the mirror. This next shade is a really beautiful one. This is the shade Dragon Slayer from the Fairy Tale collection. It's got more of a bluish gray base with a greeny gold sparkle on top, and it almost goes a little bit like bluish purple. It's very unique, and I really like that one. It's awesome. Next to that, we've got Witch's Brew. This is kind of a dark reddish brown base with a green on top. The formula on this one isn't as spectacular though as that one from the Fairy Tale collection. That Fairy Tale collection had a really great formula. And here are the shifts on those three. You can see Dragon Slayer has that kind of like bluish purple on the edge with that green. And obviously the multi-chrome has a whole lot going on in it as well. This one is a really cool one as well. Again, it's got that really sparkly texture that I love from Looxi. This is called Rockstar. This has more of a kind of grungy gray base with an olive green gold kind of sparkle on top. You can see those ones with that one texture just stand out in a beautiful way. Next to that, we've got a standard shimmer shade called Lagoon. It's similar in color, but definitely different in texture. It's more of like a standard shimmer you would find in like an Urban Decay palette or something. And then the last shade is my last multi-chrome from Looxi. This is the shade Off the Grid, and it's kind of that classic like orange to a gold to a green. I'm gonna go ahead and swatch these last two on my arm, and then we'll switch over. This first shade is a really deep kind of brown green. There is something green about it when you put it next to other browns, but next to greens, it does look very, very like taupey brown. This is the shade Hush. And then the next shade is called Reflection. This one has a really interesting texture. It almost kind of feels like a cream shadow, and it's got a red base with that same kind of like grungy green on top of it that Hush has. And then here is the mirror view for those last couple that I went ahead and swatched. You can definitely tell which ones are actual multi-chromes. And here are those greens with those blues and purples that we had swatched on the other arm. Continuing on with the greens, we have quite a few green, kind of reddish brown duochromes coming up. First is the shade Drip, and next is the shade Jeepers Creepers. The color is very similar, but Jeepers Creepers is a little bit more sparkly. So this is the shade Drip, and this is the shade Jeepers Creepers. And I think you can see that like sparkle coming through a little bit more on Jeepers Creepers. Next is the shade Rocky Road, and this one is getting discontinued, which is a shame because I think it's really nice. It's that same kind of green, brown, but this one goes a little bit more gold, and then there's a red shift in it as well, which I'll go ahead and try to show in the mirror. Next is the shade Peacock, which is like the sparkly version. It's really beautiful, but it doesn't have that red shift in it. It's just that like gold with that reddish brown base. And then last, this is a really like sparkly version. This is like that chunky sparkle, but this one has a fine sparkle in it that's very apparent. And this is the shade Howl at the Moon. So let me go ahead and swatch those three. This is Rocky Road. This is Peacock, and then this last one is Howl at the Moon. And here are those 5 with the mirror. I feel like Howl at the Moon has a really strong pink shift. Peacock has a little bit more of a blue shift. And then actually Rocky Road on here, I feel like you can see the shift the least, but hopefully you can see that red shimmer in there. Next we have 2 that are so similar to me. This is the shade Ditto. This is from the Butterfly Kisses 2 collection. It's a very like punchy, kind of acidic yellow lime green with a pinkish silver shift on top. Next to that is the shade Mistletoe Meetup from the Holiday 2022 collection. This one has that same kind of acidic green, but it's got like a green blue sparkle in it that shifts to that pink. Underneath that is the shade Reagan, and this is a pretty standard kind of shimmer shade, but it's an interesting like green with a gold, but it's a little bit darker than most like green golds that I have. It's got a really warm green in the base, but there's something grungy about it too. This shade is one of my favorites. This is from the Happy Hour collection. This is Margarita, and it's got that same kind of sparkle to it that a shade like Angel Wings has, or something like Dragon Slayer over here. It's just a much lighter shade. It's a yellow with a green sparkle that shifts pink, which I'll show you in the mirror after I've swatched out a couple more. This next shade is from the Holiday 2022 collection. This is Glisten and Gleam. It's an interesting one. It's almost like a neon pastel yellow. It's a little chunky. You've got to kind of work to smooth it out, but it does have a nice sparkle to it. It almost has like a creamy texture. And then the last yellow that I want to swatch on this arm is Nectar. This is from the Butterfly Kisses, I can't remember if it's 1 or 2, I think maybe 1 collection. And it's a really pretty light gold, but that's really all it is. There's not much else to it beyond that light gold. Let me go grab the mirror and show you the shifts in these. And then I'm going to actually be done with this arm because I'd rather save the rest to swatch together, and I know I won't have enough room for that. I feel like with this angle, you can really see those shifts. Like Mistletoe Meetup has that strong pink. You can kind of see that pinky orange in Margarita. You can see a little bit of blue in the Glisten and Gleam shade. And then, like I said, the last one, Nectar, doesn't really have any shifts going on in it. So now that we have all of the greens and yellows together, I'll go ahead and run through the names one last time before I wash off this arm. So this is the shade Morning Rain, Peppermint Kisses, Phone Home, Apollo, Emerald City, Wish You Were Here, Dragon Slayer, Witch's Brew, Rockstar, Lagoon, Off the Grid, Hush, and Reflection. And then on this arm, we have Drip, Jeepers Creepers, Rocky Road, Peacock, Howl at the Moon, Ditto, Mistletoe Meetup, Reagan, Margarita, Glisten and Gleam, and Nectar. Now we've got a fresh arm again, and this is the shade Until Dawn that we're starting off with for the golds and kind of like coppers. This is a shade I've come around on. It's from the Halloween collection, and it's really chunky, but as you smooth it out, it does have a beautiful gold and pink sparkle throughout it. Next to that is the shade Burnt Toast, which is a complete dupe for the shade Harvest from Terra Moons. It's similar to some of the ones on this side, but it's definitely way more gold, whereas the other ones do have something green about them. There's really no green to be seen in this shade. And then lastly, I want to swatch Scarecrow right now. It's similar, but it has a little bit less dimension in it than the shade Burnt Toast does. It's kind of just that like coppery shimmer shade. Now I've got another three that I would like to compare. This first one, Gore to Mercy, is interesting. It's got kind of like that burnt, kind of reddish orange copper kind of base with a really piecey green sparkle in it. Next I've got For the Gram, which base-wise is pretty similar, but this one has a little bit more of a metallic texture and a little bit of something kind of like gold in it. And then lastly, we've got the Monarch, which is that really sparkly texture. And again, same base, but you'll see the differences as I swatch them out. So here's Gore to Mercy. Here is For the Gram. And then here is the Monarch. And I feel like you can see those differences between them once they're swatched out. And we'll use the power of the mirror for this set, although you can see not a whole lot of shifts happening beyond what you could already see. Now we've got what is one of my favorite shadows. This is the shade Social Butterfly. I think it's going to be really similar to the shade Isabella from the new Odin's Eye release. It's got a warm reddish kind of base on it with a strong gold sparkle, and it's that formula that I absolutely love. But then it shifts to a blue, which I will try my best to show you here in a second. This shade is Caterpillar. It's a very vibrant red-orange with a gold shift on top. And again, that beautiful, beautiful texture from Looxi. I feel like this is the golden age of Looxi texture, is like those butterfly kiss collections. Oh, so beautiful. And then we've got the shade Hot Rod. This one is a little bit chunkier. It's kind of got an orange base, maybe more of like a yellowy orange base with a blue sparkle on top. And I'll go ahead and show you the shift on that one as well here in a moment. Next, we've got the shade Gingerbread, which also is kind of chunky, but this one is a lighter pinky kind of orange base with that blue sparkle. And both Hot Rod and Gingerbread shift to a pink sparkle, so hopefully the mirror will be able to catch that. And then we'll go ahead and swatch this last orange shade. This is Bahama Mama, which is my favorite drink. It's an orange base. You can kind of see it's like a very vibrant orange with a pink shift on top. This one, again, chunky, but once you smooth it out, it does get that sparkle. Not quite the same though as like that golden age type of shade. I feel like I'm struggling with the angle a little bit on this one, but I'm hoping that on Social Butterfly you can see that little tiny bit of like bluish silver in it, in the sparkle. And then when it comes down to those bottom ones, I think you can see that pink shimmer in it a little bit more, especially in like Gingerbread. I'm going to show you both of my arms, and then I'm actually going to wash off this arm because there's a lot of pinks with gold, and I want to be able to compare all of them on one arm for you. So here are all of those together, and then I'll go swatch or wash this off. So starting off our pink with gold shadows that we have the shade Fuzzy Flamingo from the Happy Hour collection. This one, really sparkly, and it's got a strong kind of like punchy coral pink base with that gold shift. Next to that we have Oh Bother, and this one has a similar kind of color in the base, a little less opaque though, so I feel like it doesn't show up quite as strong, but you get that gold a lot in that one. And then last for this palette we have the shade Champagne Punch, which is even paler in the base, but still has a very strong gold shift. And I feel like all of these kind of shift to a little bit of a silvery blue as well, so I'll show that to you once we've swatched all of them. So next up for this group, we've got the shade Arctic Rose. This has pretty much the same thing going, maybe a little bit deeper of a base than Champagne Punch and Oh Bother, but you can see those are all pretty similar. Next one is a pretty drastic change though, because this is more of a satin type of texture. This is the shade Baby Girl, and it's got a nice sheen, but it definitely is not sparkly like the others are. And then this last one that we're gonna do is Venus, and this has the coolest pink base, and it does have more of like a greeny gold leaning sparkle rather than that really strong yellow gold that you saw before. And there's the difference in those base colors. And here's the mirror to show you which of them have that kind of like silvery blue thing that I was talking about versus which ones really don't. Now we have two from the Happy Hour collection that aren't my favorite. I find that they're really chunky. The first one is the shade Cosmo, and the second is Tequila Sunrise. And again, you can get them to smooth out, but they're just not my favorite shades out of what Looxi has to offer. But you can see Cosmo has a little bit more of like a purpley pink kind of going on, same as like that purpley pink that's in Venus, whereas Tequila Sunrise is a little bit more of a warm pink. Then the last two shades that I have from Looxi that are shimmers are the shade Pixie Dust and Jingle Juice. Pixie Dust is from the Fairy Tale collection, and it's similar to these other two, but I like it the most out of the three, and it does shift gold. And then Jingle Juice is beautiful. It's like a vibrant hot pink sparkle, and it does have more of that sparkle in it, and I like the base color as well. Let me go grab the mirror and show you these last few shifts. Here are the shifts on those last few, and you can see they all kind of do that golden shift in them, but the pink is what you're predominantly seeing. So we'll go ahead and run through those shimmer shades one last time. We've got Until Dawn, Burnt Toast, Scarecrow, Gore to Mercy, For the Gram, The Monarch, Social Butterfly, Caterpillar, Hot Rod, Gingerbread, and Bahama Mama. Then on this arm we have Fuzzy Flamingo, Oh Bother, Champagne Punch, Arctic Rose, Baby Girl, Venus, Cosmo, Tequila Sunrise, Pixie Dust, and Jingle Juice. To round us out, we'll go ahead and swatch all of the matte shades I have. So I've got three that kind of are along the like neutral brown leaning into yellow family. First, I've got the shade Lovely Bones. Then I've got the shade Peanut Butter. And then lastly, Spiced Lemon. Let me grab a little bit more of that one. Next, we've got the shade Tiger, which is a really fun color to me. I will say the Looxi mattes are pretty smooth. I feel like they blend out decently. They're not my favorite mattes, but they are really soft and like buttery feeling, like that classic buttery texture, you know? Next is the shade Blood Moon. Here's that one. And then last is the shade Mesa, and I feel like that one feels maybe a little bit drier, but still pretty smooth. We've got two really punchy ones. This red shade is Boop, and it's a little bit drier. And I feel like it does lean a little bit more pink than true red once it's on. But then the next shade is like a neon kind of pink, and this is the shade Bleeding Heart. That's a really pretty one. You can kind of see what I mean about how Boop definitely starts to look more pink on the arm or on the eyes. Now we've got two more neutral pinks. The darker one is Dreamy and the lighter one is Forever. There they are. And you can definitely see more of a difference, I feel like, on my arm than maybe what exists in the pan. And to round us out, we've got three really punchy colors. First is Xenia, which is kind of like a purple pink. I really enjoy that one. Next is Caribbean Blue, which is a little bit drier again, and I feel like needs built up The blue isn't my favorite. I also feel like it doesn't blend quite as well. And then we have this shade Gremlin, which again, harder and a little bit harder to build up as well. Like it's harder pressed and hard to build and blend, but they are really pretty colors. One last time, there are all of those matte. They are Lovely Bones, Peanut Butter, Spiced Lemon, Tiger, Blood Moon, Mesa, Boop, Bleeding Heart, Dreamy, Forever, Xenia, Caribbean Blue, and Gremlin. All right, well, that was my whole current Looxi Beauty collection swatched out. I know I've put out a lot of Looxi videos in the past, so hopefully it was helpful to have everything all together in one video. If it was, feel free to like the video. Let me know what you think down below. Let me know of any other content you want to see from me in the future, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. And until I see you next time, I hope that you stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. Bye!